What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about the Mega Timeline and the non-Mega Timeline theory, where this came from, what games fall into this, all of that fun stuff. So, what this is this is a theory. Now, a lot of Pokemon fans will treat this as canon, and I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but this is only a theory. This has never been confirmed by GameFreak, that there is a timeline in the Pokemon world where Mega Evolution exists, and there is a timeline in the Pokemon world where Mega Evolution does not exist, and that these timelines, we've actually seen both in Pokemon games. The generic version of the theory is just that any game you played without Mega Evolution is in the non-Mega timeline, and then the games you've played with Mega Evolution are in the Mega timeline, but it actually isn't that simple, and we will get to that. But first, let's talk about where this theory came from. So, in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you have the Delta episode, and what this is a little post-game plot where a meteor is coming to Hoenn, and it is a very, very bad meteor that will pretty much end Hoenn, and you are talking to these scientists, and they say they have a plan to warp the meteor into another timeline. And Zinnia explains, well, we don't know what'll happen to that timeline. Like, they may not have anything to fight off this meteor. And basically, this whole talk of alternate timelines just spiraled into a discussion of there being a Mega Timeline, a non-Mega Timeline. This, and the fact that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were the exact same games as Ruby and Sapphire, but they added Mega Evolution into those games. So people basically formed this theory around the idea that Ruby is the Hoenn story in the non-Mega Timeline, while Omega Ruby is the Hoenn story in the Mega Timeline, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty basic theory. It's, it's not a super complicated one. And I think it is one with some merit. I mean, because the fact is, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire stories are the same stories as Ruby and Sapphire. It just has Mega Evolution incorporated into it, and Primal Reversion by that extent as well. There's even key points that are just a little bit different, like the fact that the red orb or the blue orb are still in both games. But in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they are used to Primal Revert Groudon and Kyogre. So you can see kind of just things like that do kind of point to them being alternate timelines. Now, again, the initial theory here was that all games that have Mega Evolution are in the Mega Timeline. All games that do not have Mega Evolution are in the non-Mega Timeline. So this would mean the games in the Mega Timeline are X and Y, obviously, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, obviously, then you have Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and then you also would have Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee. Now, obviously, this kind of means that there's multiple Mega Timelines, because Let's Go Pikachu is a different timeline from Let's Go Eevee. Omega Ruby is a different timeline from Alpha Sapphire. X is a different timeline from Y. Sun and Moon, not only are they different timelines, but their timelines are separate from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon isn't a sequel game like Black 2 and White 2. It is a complete remaster. Same story, but with some differences. So, I say all this to say, every game's a different timeline, really, when you think about it. But whatever, we're going to run with a super generic thing of some are in Megas, some are not. This meant that the non-Mega games were, the Gen 1 games, Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, or Green, depending on where in the world you are. Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Diamond Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, White 2, and even Pokemon Sword, Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, Legends Arceus, and Also, some people would say Scarlet and Violet. However, Scarlet and Violet is kind of the game to really blow this wide open and say, no, just because a game doesn't have Mega Evolution does not mean that it's in a non-Mega timeline. Because Scarlet and Violet, we don't have Mega Evolution. Sure, there's talk of it coming up in DLC, but as of right now, we do not have Mega Evolution in it. And yet, it is in the Mega timeline. We know this because Roaring Moon is a Paradox Pokemon you can catch, and its dex in Pokemon Violet, or just the Occulture books in Pokemon Scarlet, will compare it to a phenomenon that occurs in another part of the world. So, that is a clear reference to Mega Evolution. So, it's the fact that it's referencing that something like this exists means that Mega Evolution exists in this timeline. So Scarlet and Violet are indeed in the Mega timeline. Now, it goes even further, because Scarlet and Violet are in the same timeline as Sword and Shield. You know this because in the Naranja or Uva Academy, depending on the version you're playing, you can find a book that was written by Sonia, and it is specifically Sonia talking about the events of Sword and Shield. The exact moment she's talking about is that moment where Bede uses Rose's Copperaja to destroy this mural in Stow-on-Side, and it reveals that there's this statue of Zacian and Zamazenta, kind of revealing that they're the true hero. You get the whole point. The point here being that these games, Scarlet and Violet, which again we know are in the Mega timeline, directly reference the events of Sword and Shield, which would mean Sword and Shield are also in the Mega timeline. So where does this leave us? I would say that I am a believer in the Mega timeline, non-Mega timeline, but Scarlet and Violet proves that it's a lot harder to tell which version a game is in unless you kind of get an outright statement of Mega Evolution or an outright statement that there isn't Mega Evolution. We don't know that Heart Gold and Soul Silver are not in the Mega timeline. We don't know that Black and White are in the non-Mega timeline. The only games that I would say for sure are in the non-Mega timeline would be, I would say that Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald are safe bets, because again, those are the same stories as Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, just without Mega Evolution. Whereas in comparison, you take Sinnoh stories, there are no Sinnoh stories in Mega Evolution, so you can't say this one has Megas, this one doesn't, right? Then you have, I would say, Red, Blue, Yellow, or Fire Red, Leaf Green. Those games also do not have Mega Evolution and are in the non-Mega timeline. But the reason I think they're in the non-Mega timeline is not because they don't have Mega Evolution, but because of the events of this game. So in these games, obviously, the main character that you are playing as, that is Red, and your rival is Blue, Gary, or, some of y'all would just name him something really mean. But in this story, you encounter Team Rocket, and you take them on. You defeat Giovanni as he takes over Silphco, and you defeat him as the gym leader, and he bails as the gym leader, and all this. Well, Let's Go kind of contradicts these events. While Red and Blue are indeed characters in these games, and so is Green if you are, talking about Fire Red and Leaf Green. They had the character Green, the female protagonist. She's also in Let's Go. They see those characters, but the roles are a little bit different because Red is not the champion, Blue is not the champion, but they are still characters in the game who have strong Pokemon and even use their teams from, Heart Gold and Soul Silver and, Black and White, the other games where we've seen them pop up. Now, the thing that shows that these are different timelines, though, is the fact that in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, you have to take on Team Rocket, and you have to fight Giovanni at Silphco, and you have to fight him in the gym. So what I would propose happen is that you truly do play through Let's Go in a different timeline. In this timeline, Red and Blue had a normal adventure through Kanto. They took on the gyms. They challenged the Elite Four. Maybe they did become the champion and lost to Trace, but I don't want to think of that being the case. Or maybe they even disbanded their role as champion. I don't know. But regardless, they had a normal journey, did not encounter Team Rocket. And Red and Blue on this journey may have found Mega Stones, which is why they're able to Mega Evolve their Pokemon. Now, fast forward a few years later, you, the player character in Let's Go, travels through the region, you take down Team Rocket, and, on your journey, you will run into Red and Blue, and, take them on, and they'll use Mega Evolution, you get to use Mega Evolution, whereas in the non-Mega timeline, it was Red and Blue who took down Team Rocket, but they never found Mega Evolution. Perhaps there's even, a way we know how they got their Mega Stones. Maybe Pokemon Origins, while it does show Red take on Team Rocket, perhaps this part about him getting his Mega Stone is Charizardite X, perhaps that is a similar way to how they got it in the Mega timeline. Perhaps. Maybe that's getting a little more speculative than I planned to do this video, but nonetheless, that's what I'd say. Now, I do think there's a chance that this Let's Go timeline is the same timeline as Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because you do see characters from those games pop up, or specifically you see one character, that being Mina. And, it makes sense because then in Sun and Moon, which is way in the future, Mina's obviously grown up a little, and Red and Blue are grown up a little and are still using Mega Evolution. So, there you have it, guys. I know this is kind of a super complex theory, but I've seen so many, as I've done all these videos on Mega Evolutions, I've just seen so many comments about the Mega Evolution timeline. I've seen people treating it as if it's concrete fact, and I wanted to address the fact that it actually is just a theory. It's never been confirmed by the Pokemon Company, and I really just wanted to address the fact that just because a game doesn't have Mega Evolution doesn't mean it's in the non-Mega timeline if this theory is in fact true. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet exist in a world with Mega Evolution. We know that now. Like it or not. Be sure to let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Are you a believer in this? I am, to the extent that every Pokemon game is a different timeline. So, I don't know. I think the theory's kind of one of those weird things we obsess over and hold on to, even though it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Be sure to also like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you stay up to date on all of our future Pokemon videos. Because, yeah, I mean, we've got some cool stuff coming. And I love doing theory videos, explainer videos, all that stuff. If you don't want to miss that, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Until next time, I will see all of you later.